Jemima was a second-year student at Greenvale University. Bright, ambitious, a bit of an overthinker but grounded. April had always been her favorite month. It meant the cold was fading, campus was blooming again, and spring break was right around the corner. Like most students, she was worn thin from midterms, part-time work, and the general grind of student life. A short trip home sounded like the perfect recharge. But this April felt different. It started with the dreams. Every night for a week, she found herself standing on the side of a dark road, luggage by her side, waiting. There were no streetlights, no cars, just the sound of wind rustling through unseen trees. Sometimes, she'd hear footsteps behind her. Other times, a low hum coming from the fog ahead. But always, the dream ended the same way. Headlights cutting through the mist, a bus pulling up slowly, its doors creaking open, and an unseen voice whispering, "Are you ready to go?" She'd wake up breathless, heart pounding. At first, she shrugged it off. Final stress, she told herself. But the dreams kept coming. One day, while walking across the quad, she passed by an older woman handing out leaflets. A campus preacher, one of those harmless fringe types. But something about this woman made Jemima pause. Her eyes were sharp, too sharp, and when their gazes met, the woman stopped mid-sentence and stared directly at her. "You're planning to leave in April," she said flatly. Not a question. A statement. Jemima froze. Yeah, I'm going home for the break." The woman stepped closer and handed her a small folded card. "Then you need to pray. Before you go. Or you won't come back." Jemima laughed awkwardly. "Thanks, I guess." But the woman didn't laugh. Her eyes stayed locked on Jemima's, unblinking. There are things waiting on certain roads. Things that feed on the unaware. Then she turned, as if their conversation was finished, and walked away. That night, Jemima finally opened the card. It wasn't a prayer. Not exactly. Just a single phrase. "He who travels unaware shall be devoured by the path." There was no name, no signature, just that single ominous line. By now, Jemima's dreams had started shifting. The fog was darker, thicker. She could hear something breathing in it. And when the bus doors opened, it was no longer empty. There were eyes inside, watching her. She confided in her roommate, Talia, a neuroscience major who chalked it up to anxiety mixed with exam burnout. "Your brain is literally processing stress with hypersymbolism. A foggy road, an unknown destination. It's classic uncertainty projection. You're worried about your future, not a haunted bus." Jemima wanted to believe her. Logic always made things less frightening. So she made up her mind. She wouldn't let dreams or cryptic warnings control her. She booked her ticket home, April 12th. An overnight bus that left at 10:45 p.m. Still, something gnawed at her. She began noticing patterns. Flyers posted on campus boards with missing student names, several of them last seen during spring break trips in previous Aprils. All unrelated schools. Different cities. But the dates lined up eerily close. Every case vanished in early to mid-April. No foul play. No trace. She even checked local news archives. Headlines blurred together. Student disappears after boarding night bus, April 2019. No clues in mysterious April vanishing. Family demands answers. Campus mourns another missing scholar. Police stumped. It was almost too absurd to be real. Almost like a myth hiding inside real news. One night, Jemima decided to test her theory. She returned to the quad where she'd seen the strange preacher. It was nearly sunset. The place was mostly empty, except for the woman. As if she'd been waiting. "I read it," Jemima said quietly. "The card. What does it mean?" The woman didn't smile. Some roads aren't meant to be walked without covering. Some journeys awaken things that wait quietly the rest of the year. They feed in cycles. April is one of them. "What things?" Jemima whispered. "Things that hitchhike through time. They don't need doors. Only a vehicle. And an open vessel." Jemima blinked. "A vehicle, like a bus?" The woman nodded. or a train, or even a plane. It's not the method. It's the moment. And whether you enter protected. For a long moment, Jemima didn't say anything. Then she asked, "So what do I do?" The woman finally smiled. Softly this time, almost sadly. She pulled a small vial from her coat pocket. It glinted in the evening light. "Before you leave," she said, "anoint your forehead with this and pray Psalm 91. Do it with belief. That's your covering." Jemima hesitated but took the vial. It felt cold, almost unnaturally so. "And if I don't?" she asked. The woman didn't answer directly. She simply turned and walked away, fading into the evening crowd. Jemima kept the vial tucked in her coat for days. She thought about throwing it away more than once. But when the night of her trip finally arrived, her hands were shaking as she packed her bag. At 9:45 p.m., an hour before her departure, she sat on the edge of her bed, holding the tiny vial, trying to decide what she believed. Talia sat cross-legged nearby, watching her. "You really gonna go through with it?" Talia asked. "The anointing thing." Jemima laughed nervously. "If I don't, I'll just sit on that bus thinking about demons in the fog the whole way home." "Fair enough," Talia grinned. "Want me to read the psalm for you?" Jemima nodded. They read it together. Psalm 91. Word by word. Sentence by sentence. She dabbed the oil on her forehead, heart pounding like a drum. For a moment, it felt ridiculous. Then, everything in the room went completely still. No breeze. No outside noise. Not even the sound of other dorms. Just silence. And a very slight warmth. Not heat, but presence. Jemima blinked. And then it was gone. She zipped her bag shut and headed for the bus station. The bus pulled up exactly on time. A little late, maybe 5 minutes behind schedule. But it was the same bus line she'd used before. Same blue and white logo. Same smiling driver checking IDs. Nothing strange. Nothing, until Jemima stepped on board. And saw the first seat, empty, but soaked with something dark. The driver didn't seem to notice. And behind her, the door hissed shut. The sound of the bus door closing behind Jemima felt final. Too final. It wasn't just the physical seal of the hydraulic hiss. It was something deeper, like the closing of a book or the shutting of a tomb. She hesitated in the narrow aisle, her eyes still fixed on that first seat. It wasn't drenched in anything obvious like blood. Nothing that red. But the dark patch on the faded fabric looked wrong. Thick. Stained. And even in the dim blue lighting of the bus interior, it glistened in a way that suggested it hadn't dried yet. The driver gave a small cough. "All the way to Millerton?" he asked, his voice light, almost friendly. Jemima turned, forcing a polite smile. "Yes. Long ride. Might as well get comfortable." She nodded and moved farther down the aisle. As she passed the strange seat, she tried not to look at it again, but couldn't help noticing that no one had sat near it. In fact, no one was sitting in the first 3 rows. Everyone was clustered near the back, silent, heads tilted down, eyes closed. There was no small talk, no phone calls, not even the usual shuffle of earbuds or snacks. Just eerie stillness. She picked a seat near the middle, diagonally behind an older man in a beanie who hadn't moved once since she boarded. She settled in, clutching her bag like it was a lifeline, and stared out the window. The bus rolled away from the station, pulling slowly into the night. Outside, the city slipped past in a blur of dim lights and empty streets. Inside, the silence continued, unnatural for a full bus. Jemima opened her phone, checked the time, 11:02 p.m. She scrolled through messages. Her mom had sent a safe travels. Baby girl red heart # text with a photo of their dog curled up on the couch. She smiled faintly. It was the kind of text that should have brought comfort. But something felt off. The air was thick, like the moment before a storm, or a classroom just before bad news. She looked up. The older man in the beanie still hadn't moved. Neither had the woman 2 rows back, whose face she couldn't quite make out in the dim light. But there was something strange about her hands. They were gripping the seat in front of her, knuckles white. Jemima squinted. Was she shaking? She leaned forward, about to say something, when the woman's head suddenly jerked to the side. Not turned, jerked. Like something had pulled it. Jemima flinched, heart hammering. The woman now stared straight ahead. Not blinking. Not moving. A chill ran down Jemima's spine. She sank back into her seat and pulled her hoodie tight around her. The temperature seemed to have dropped since they left the station. The road outside had become less familiar. No city lights now, just forest. Endless, dark forest. She knew the route to Millerton took them through a few rural stretches, but this looked different. She turned to check the road signs. Nothing. No highway markers, no exit signs. Just empty black road and those haunting trees. She glanced at the driver. His face was barely visible in the rearview mirror, but there was something strange in the way he sat, like he was too still, too calm, as if he wasn't really driving. A soft noise interrupted her thoughts. Breathing, but not hers. Slow, raspy breathing coming from the aisle beside her. She turned quickly. No one. Just empty space. Then a whisper. Faint. So faint she almost convinced herself it was imagined. Are you ready? Her heart stopped. It was the same voice from her dream. Jemima looked around wildly, but everyone on the bus was still frozen, like mannequins left behind after closing time. Then the bus lights flickered. Just for a second. But in that second, she saw them. Figures. In the aisle. In the seats. Standing by the windows. Their faces were pale, hollow. Eyes like ink spilled across parchment. Mouths slightly open as if whispering. And then, darkness. The lights snapped off completely. A chorus of whispers rose, soft at first, then louder. Dozens of overlapping voices, chanting, mumbling, pleading. Words in no language she recognized, but full of grief and hunger. She shot to her feet, reaching for her phone, its flashlight, something, anything. And just as suddenly, the lights snapped back on. Everyone on the bus was still. The aisle was empty. Jemima's breath came in sharp gasps. Her hands trembled. She clutched her phone tightly, blinking hard, trying to will her heart to slow down. She turned again to the older man in front of her. He was looking at her now. For the first time. His eyes were wide, and filled with the unmistakable look of someone who knew exactly what was happening. You saw them, didn't you? He asked, his voice barely audible. Jemima nodded slowly. They come every year, he said. April is when they're strongest. She stared at him. What are they? Lost travelers. Students. Workers. People who boarded buses like this and never reached their destination. That doesn't make sense, she whispered. It makes perfect sense, the man replied, voice cracking. This isn't just a bus route. It's a path. And paths can be corrupted. Roads can remember. He leaned closer. This road? It remembers every soul that's crossed it without covering. Jemima felt her throat go dry. Without? Protection. Prayer. Purpose. The ones who ride blind are the easiest to take. She swallowed hard. I prayed, she said quickly. Before I left. I anointed myself. The man's eyes softened, just a little. Then you might make it through. But you need to stay awake. Stay aware. Don't answer them. No matter what. Answer what? He looked straight ahead, his voice barely a breath. When they call your name. The rest of the ride was a blur of tension. The bus moved steadily, impossibly so. There were no stops. No pit breaks. No change in terrain. Jemima kept her eyes open, knuckles white around her seat's armrest. She avoided blinking too long, afraid she'd open them again to something else sitting beside her. At 1:37 a.m., the temperature dropped again. Frost crept across the windows from the inside, spiderwebbing the glass. And then, she heard it. Not a whisper this time. A voice. Soft. Familiar. Jemima. Her head snapped up. No one had spoken. No one had moved. Then again. Jemima. Come home. Her mother's voice. Warm. Loving. Just like the voicemail she'd left earlier. But it wasn't coming from her phone. It was coming from the window. Jemima turned. Outside the glass, pressed against the frost, was a face. Her mother's face. Smiling. Eyes weeping. Come on, baby girl. Come home. The bus lights dimmed. All around her, passengers began murmuring. Some were crying. Some were laughing. One stood up and started walking down the aisle. The older man grabbed her wrist. Don't look. Don't speak. And whatever you do, don't answer. Jemima's knuckles were bloodless as she gripped the armrest. The bus was no longer just a means of transportation. It felt like a coffin hurtling down an endless road. Outside, her mother's face lingered in the frost, unmoving. The eyes were wrong now, too wide, too bright. The lips curved up in a smile that never quite reached them. The voice repeated, softer this time. Come home, Jemima. A voice designed to break her guard. She clenched her eyes shut. The older man's voice was sharp in her ear. Don't look. Don't answer. They're not who they look like. I know, she whispered. But it was getting harder. The voice wasn't just outside now. It was weaving its way into her memories. The way her mom used to wake her up for school. Humming. The scent of coconut oil and vanilla from when they'd hug. She knew it was fake, but that didn't make it hurt any less. She tried to steady her breathing. Psalm 91, she thought. He who dwells in the secret place. The words came, shaky and cracked, but she whispered them anyway. The frost on the window twitched, like something had heard her. Then, without warning, the frost pulled back from the glass. Gone. So was the face. And with it, the voices stopped. The silence was not a relief. It was worse. The kind of silence you get in hospitals at night, or forests when the animals vanish. A silence that says something is watching. Jemima turned to the man. What's your name? He hesitated, then nodded slightly. Jonas. I've ridden this bus before. Her heart jumped. You've survived it. He looked away. Barely. I was a freshman. Spring break. 1999. Jemima blinked. That long ago? He nodded. I've avoided April travel ever since. But I came back this time because I needed to know if it was real. If I imagined it. Or if I really left people behind. She leaned in. What happened? Jonas exhaled slowly, as if just telling the story might awaken it again. I was on my way home. I hadn't prayed, hadn't prepared. I was just tired of school and excited to get away. I didn't notice anything at first. Just a late-night bus with a bunch of quiet passengers. But then one by one, they disappeared. Jemima's throat tightened. Disappeared. First it was the girl in front of me. Then a guy 2 rows back. One moment they were there. The next, gone. No sound. No movement. Just empty seats, as if they were never real. He paused. I didn't even realize until I looked down and noticed her jacket on the floor. Still zipped up. Still warm. Jemima shivered. They don't take everyone, Jonas said. Only the unguarded. The ones unaware. They whisper first. If you answer, you become part of the road. He turned, eyes sharp. That's why the first few rows are always empty. That's where it starts. The further back you sit, the more time you have to resist. Jemima's mind reeled. She glanced at the other passengers. Many were still motionless, but now she noticed it. Gaps. Empty seats that weren't empty before. A man near the emergency exit, gone. His duffel bag still resting beside the seat. How do we stop it? She asked. Jonas stared ahead. We don't. We ride it out. An hour passed. Or maybe a minute. Time had begun to fracture. Jemima's phone still read 1:37 a.m. She tapped the screen. Nothing changed. Then the lights flickered again. And suddenly, the bus wasn't on the road anymore. It was floating, suspended in a void of black mist and shifting shadows. The windows no longer showed trees or highways, just dark shapes moving slowly across a fog that had no floor or ceiling. Jonas inhaled sharply. We've crossed over. To what? The memory of the road. This is where they wait. A deep thump shook the bus from below. Then another. Like footsteps. Jemima's breath caught in her throat. Is it them? Jonas nodded slowly. They're searching. For the ones not sealed. She touched her forehead where she'd anointed herself with oil. The prayer, will it hold? Only if you believe it. The lights flickered again, then surged violently. The overhead speakers crackled to life with static. Then, a voice, childlike, echoed, "Welcome back." Jonas gritted his teeth. They know I returned. They remember me. The lights snapped off. Pitch black. Jemima couldn't even see her hands. Then, bang, something slammed against the side of the bus. Bang. Again. A third time, closer now. Something was circling. The passengers began to murmur. This time, they weren't just silent victims. Some were responding. I hear you, whispered a woman near the back. Mom. No, Jonas hissed. Don't answer. But it was too late. The woman stood, walked blindly down the aisle, hands stretched out like she was sleepwalking. Jemima tried to stop her, but as the woman passed, her body began to fade. Her legs vanished first, then her torso. By the time she reached the front of the bus, there was nothing left but her echo. The doors didn't even open. She was just gone. The whispers stopped. Jonas shook his head slowly. They just took her. She let them. The lights flickered on again. This time weaker. Fuzzier. Like an old film reel barely holding together. Jemima realized then, this journey wasn't random. It was a ritual. And it had been repeating every April for decades. Maybe longer. She needed answers. She needed to understand the road's origin. She turned to Jonas. Why students? Why April? He stared into the aisle, voice low. They feed on hope. Students are full of it. Plans. Dreams. Futures not yet written. And April. April is a season of transition. Between endings and beginnings. Some roads open when time is fragile. Jemima swallowed hard. So we're bait. He nodded. Unless we break the cycle. She clenched her fists. How? Before Jonas could answer, the bus jolted violently. Screams. The bus leaned hard to the right as if something had hit it, or grabbed it. Out the window, the mist parted just long enough for Jemima to see a figure. Towering. Bone-thin. Face stitched with hundreds of mouths, all whispering in unison. It had no eyes, but it was looking straight at her. Then, it spoke. Not with a voice, but inside her mind. You are not sealed. Jemima screamed, grabbing her head. Jonas pulled her down into the aisle. Say it now. The prayer. I already said it. Say it again. Mean it this time. Tears streaming, heart exploding in her chest. She spoke with a voice that didn't feel like hers. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. The bus jolted again. Jonas shouted over the chaos. Keep going. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him I will trust. A blinding light burst from the front of the bus. The creature outside let out a deafening shriek, like metal tearing through bone. The bus screamed back into motion, rocketing through the fog. Passengers cried out as the interior warped, walls bending, seats twisting. But Jemima kept praying. Louder. With everything she had. Conclusion. Part 3. Then, silence. Just like that, it was over. The windows cleared. The frost receded. And the soft glow of sunrise painted the edge of the sky. Outside, Jemima could see signs again. Gas stations. Fields. Civilization. The bus pulled into Milliton Station at 6:04 a.m. Real time. Passengers stirred, blinking like they were waking from a dream. Jemima turned to thank Jonas. But his seat was empty. Only his beanie remained. When Jemima stepped off the bus, the world felt too quiet. The early morning air at Millerton Station was crisp. Sunlight shimmered on dew-slick pavement, and somewhere nearby, a bird chirped like it hadn't just missed a brush with hell. There was no fog, no whispers, just a parking lot slowly waking up. She should have felt relief. But her spine was ice. The other passengers disembarked like nothing had happened. One young man stretched and yawned, headphones still wrapped around his neck. A woman checked her phone, furrowing her brow at texts she hadn't answered in hours. They looked normal. But Jemima knew better. She knew not everyone made it. Her eyes scanned the crowd. The woman who had walked toward the whispers? Gone. The man by the exit? Gone. There were too many empty spaces where people should have been standing. She turned back to the bus. The driver was gone. The interior dark. And where Jonas had been sitting, only his beanie remained, still neatly folded, as if placed with intention. She picked it up slowly. Inside the lining, written in faded ink. If you're reading this, you're next. Jemima's breath caught. She spun around, suddenly alert, heart hammering again. The people around her looked the same, but something was off. Their movements felt a half-second delayed. Too smooth, too silent. She forced herself to move, to walk away, to find normal ground. She stepped onto the sidewalk and called her mom. 2 rings. "Baby girl," came the warm voice. "Did you just get in?" Jemima exhaled, tears springing up instantly. Yeah, I just got in." "You sound tired. Everything okay?" Jemima paused. "Yeah, just a weird ride. I'll tell you later." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, "Did you hear them?" Her blood froze. "What?" Her mom's voice dropped an octave. "The voices. Calling you. Whispering your name." The call disconnected. Jemima stood frozen outside the station. Phone pressed to her ear even as the line went dead. That wasn't her mom. It sounded like her. But the cadence was wrong. The warmth had hollowed out in the last sentence. And the phone. She checked the call log. No outgoing calls. The number listed wasn't her mom's. Just a string of dashes and symbols. ///////. Her legs moved on instinct now. She needed space. People. Witnesses. Something real. She walked quickly down the sidewalk into the town. The streets slowly filling with life. School kids with backpacks. Baristas opening shops. Couples walking dogs. It looked like any other April morning. But the road behind her felt like a shadow that followed her too closely. By noon, she was sitting in a diner. She hadn't eaten, just ordered coffee and stared out the window. Her mind played the bus ride over and over like a cursed loop. Every time she blinked, she half expected to open her eyes and be back on that haunted road. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. "You left the door open." Jemima nearly knocked over her cup. She deleted the message and turned her phone off entirely. A waitress approached. "Everything all right, hun?" Jemima nodded, too shaken to speak. The waitress set down a napkin beside her, smiled gently, and walked away. Jemima took a sip of coffee. Her hands shook. Then she looked at the napkin. There was something written on it in pen. "They don't stop at the bus. They ride in people now." She left the diner within minutes, pulse racing again. Was someone following her? Had someone else from the bus seen the same thing? Or was this another trick? She needed answers. Real ones. Not whispers. Back at the boarding house where she was staying, she finally had time to breathe. It was a small room, clean, quiet, and blessedly ordinary. Pale blue curtains, a floral quilt, a lamp that buzzed faintly when turned on. Normal. Almost. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened her laptop. Search bar, bus disappearances April students. Nothing. She tried again, April missing students overnight travel warning. Still nothing useful. Just outdated Amber Alerts and urban legend forums. She clicked into one out of desperation. A thread titled, "April Bus Curse. Anyone else?" It only had 2 replies. The first. I remember it too. 2011. 5 people vanished. No headlines. Just gone. A user. Scarlet Static. The second was posted just a day ago. If you're reading this, pray. It's coming again. User. J____99. Jemima stared at the timestamp. Posted 1:37 a.m. The exact moment the lights first went out. She sat back, heart pounding again. Her fingers trembled as she opened her backpack, looking for something, anything, that might make her feel grounded. Inside was her journal. She flipped through pages of class notes, poems, sermon doodles, until she saw something she didn't recognize. A page she didn't remember writing. It was in her handwriting, but she had no memory of penning it. Across the center of the page, one line over and over. Don't fall asleep. Don't fall asleep. Don't fall asleep. She slammed the journal shut. Something wasn't right. She wasn't just being haunted. She was being watched. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time her eyes closed, she felt the bus beneath her. Felt the hum of the wheels, the frost creeping on the windows. She began to wonder, had she ever left? Just after 2 a.m., she heard something in the hallway. Footsteps. Then, a voice. Jemima. She shot upright. The voice wasn't her mother's this time. It was Jonah's. Hoarse. Far away. But unmistakable. She opened the door, heart in her throat. The hallway was empty. But on the floor, his beanie. And beside it, in faint chalk, Seat 3 is still empty. Jemima stared down the hallway. The beanie lay still at her feet, like a warning left at a crime scene. The chalk beside it hadn't smudged, though the air was heavy and damp like something had been breathing through the corridor just moments ago. Seat 3 is still empty. It echoed in her mind like a heartbeat. Jonah's was here. Or had been. But something else was too. She picked up the beanie, clutching it tight like it might offer protection. The air around her felt charged, static tugging at her skin, at her memories. This place, it wasn't just her boarding house anymore. It had become part of the road. A spillover from wherever that bus had gone. Because she didn't shut the door behind her. Because she let something follow her through. And now it wanted to finish the ride. Downstairs, she grabbed her anointing oil and her journal. The pages she hadn't remembered writing? They were all there now. Dozens of entries in her handwriting, detailing things she hadn't lived. Stories of passengers before her. Their names. Their screams. The moments they vanished. It was like she'd been chosen to carry the memories of the road itself. She turned to the last page. A new sentence had appeared. One that hadn't been there even minutes before. If one rides willingly, the road can be sealed. She stared at it in disbelief. One rider. Willing. A sacrifice. Jemima stood still for a long time, trying to steady her breathing. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a contract. Every April, the road opened. Every year, it demanded tribute. Students full of potential, full of light. And every year, those unaware paid the price. But what if someone knew? What if someone gave themselves before the road could take? Could it end? Or would it simply evolve? The answer lay with Jonah's. She had to find him. At dawn, she retraced her steps back to Milliton Station. The fog was thicker than it had been the previous morning, strange for April. It rolled across the streets like something searching. She reached the station's lot just as the first rays of light broke the horizon. And there it was. The bus. Exactly the same. Black windows. Number 47 flickering on the side. Door wide open. No driver. No passengers. Just waiting. Jonas stood beside it. He didn't look surprised to see her. You came, he said simply. She stepped closer. You left me. He nodded. I had to. I couldn't bring it to town. I had to draw it back here. You were strong. Stronger than I was back then. She paused. What is it? He looked at the door. A memory. A collection of every soul who answered its call. The road was created by a sacrifice once. Now it demands one to sleep again. Every year. He nodded. Until someone stops it. Jemima swallowed. So someone has to willingly ride. He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes told her everything. She stared at the open door. It was dark inside, but it was waiting. She took one step forward, then stopped. No, she said aloud. I'm not giving it another person. Not like this. Jonas blinked. You can't fight it. She looked him dead in the eye. No, but I can trap it. He frowned. What do you mean? She reached into her coat, pulling out her oil and journal. She'd read the stories, the names. She knew the patterns now. And most importantly, she knew the power of knowing. She tore out the pages of her journal, scattering them across the steps of the bus. Each page lit up faintly, etched in names, in prayers, in resistance. She poured the oil in a circle around the bus and stepped back. I call every name you took, she said. Every student. Every soul. You don't get to feed again. The fog screamed. The bus engine started, by itself. The lights inside flickered to life, red and unnatural. It's angry, Jonas muttered. I don't care. She pulled a lighter from her pocket. Lit it. Jonah's eyes went wide. You can't. But she tossed it. The oil circle ignited with a whoosh, flames leaping skyward. Pages burned in a perfect ring, sparks curling like spirits ascending. The bus shrieked. Not the brakes, the bus itself. A sound like metal begging for mercy. Then, a flash. And silence. The fire vanished. The bus was gone. No smoke. No ash. Just the empty lot. Jemima stood in the center, chest heaving. Jonas fell to his knees. You did it. She didn't answer. She couldn't feel her body anymore. Just cold. Then she turned. And saw them. Every lost student. Standing silently in a line along the edge of the lot. Watching her. Thanking her. Smiling. Faint and peaceful. One by one, they faded into mist. All except one. A girl in a yellow hoodie. The same girl who had sat in front of Jonas in 1999. She nodded. Then spoke. Seat 3 is no longer empty. A year later. April 1st. No reports of missing students. No strange frost. No black bus. Jemima moved on. Sort of. She kept the journal, though it no longer wrote itself. She sometimes dreamed of roads that stretched forever, but always woke up before they swallowed her. Jonas still sends her postcards. Never from the same place. He never rides buses. Neither does she. But every April, they both leave out oil and prayer by their windows. Just in case. And every year, on April 3rd, she receives one anonymous letter. No stamp. No return address. Just 3 words. Thank you,